So when I was thinking about the wardrobe choice for a book like this, a fantasy comic book, I was like, what else would I choose other than an Olivia Rodrigo concert t-shirt? It's not even mine. I just had it and I was like, this screams Terry Pratchett Discworld. So Terry's like, nah, I've had enough of this. I'm completely done with you, bro. Our relationship is now over because of this. But who knows? There's probably some sort of a connect between Terry Pratchett and Olivia Rodrigo, I suppose, somewhere down along the line. But regardless, we are here today reviewing the first two graphic novels slash novels of Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. So I'd only really come across this. I went into Waterstones, which for anyone who isn't in the UK is kind of it's the big bookshop franchise. God forbid I ever buy anything in there. It's like comparison to like buying something on Vintage or eBay, so like a secondhand store from a library. It's quite a bit more expensive, as you can imagine. But I saw this and I was kind of like, I've never really heard of Terry Pratchett before, so I ended up getting into like what it is that he's done. I'd kind of seen the name roundabout, knew he did some sort of novels and that he'd done Good Omens with Neil Gaiman. So I knew a little bit about Neil Gaiman, who did Coraline and Sandman. I knew that comic book series, etc., etc. But basically, what I've got here is the first two novels which are turned into a graphic novel format in the series, which is called Discworld. So it's called Discworld because basically, as you can see here, the whole world that it resides upon is sitting upon a huge turtle or tortoise. I believe it has a name. It's got like a real weird pronunciation, as everything does in any sort of fantasy book. But the world that it's set on, just on top of the four little elephants that are on top of the turtle, is basically a medieval world. So it's a fantasy fiction novel, so to say. So if you're into anything like Lord of the Rings or The Witcher, it's not necessarily quite as adult as that, but it definitely does work for adults, I would say. Would probably be most fitting for like young adults to adults rather than it would be little kids. But I think little kids could get into it because I remember little kids reading through Harry Potter and those books were huge as hell. And this isn't that big, so to say, because it is a graphic novel. So the first two novels are called The Colour of Magic and Light Fantastic. As time goes on through the Discworld novels, of which there are 41, the characters change and it just goes around different parts of the world and different things that go on. But these two novels specifically focus on Rent, right? What? I don't know how to say this. Rincewind, who's a wizard who can't really do magic, and Discworld's first ever tourist called Two Flower. He's just this little guy you'll see in the pictures that I show you. And basically they go through, and Rincewind seems to have been thought of very highly and things seem to work out for him, but it seems to be just purely by luck. He's a bit of a clumsy wizard. And the guy Two Flower, that's his little companion, is just going through like a really wealthy tourist who's came to like a less affluent place. We don't really know where he's came from as such, I don't believe. But the adventures they go on is basically what's really enjoyable like about this. And as someone who's never read anything from Terry Pratchett, who's not necessarily like a huge proponent for fantasy and things like that, this is really, really enjoyable. I was like, well, I kind of like graphic novels. Getting into the first ever novel might be a little bit difficult, especially if there's 41 of them. They're not all turned into graphic novels. I think there's another two that are, and they were put out like quite a number of years ago. Even this one came out in 2008, and the original novels would have came out. I think the first one was like 1983 when Terry Pratchett put it out. I will flick through the pages for you so you can see what the artwork is like. It kind of does look like stereotypical, like old, like 2000s, 1990s British comic art style, which is really, really cool. Terry Pratchett is, of course, British himself, so that kind of checks out. And a lot of it is very medieval, which kind of screams old Grand Britannia. So as the novel concludes, it doesn't necessarily tell you where it's going to go. There's obviously another 39 novels, but you'll only find them in a novel format. They won't be in a graphic novel format. It's a shame they didn't do any more of these. The fact this came in 2008 kind of makes me think they're not going to do any more, which kind of makes this even more special. So to say that I couldn't recommend this any more highly. I really enjoy the artwork, the character of Death, who kind of comes back and forth. He's obviously not a character that can really die off, so to say. So he comes back and forth. They add in a number of mythical beasts and really powerful warriors, etc., etc., and kind of something along the lines of like magic and spaceships. The guy's obviously a wizard, and that is actual magic within the world. Of course, it's fantasy. It's going to be a little bit As far as my thoughts and impressions on this book go, it would be like a 5 out of 5. This is one of the best graphic novels that I've ever read. I quite like the fact that even though if you wanted to go and read a lot more about the Discworld series, there is another 39 novels and you could do that. But because these are the only two that have been sort of somewhat more recently published as graphic novels, and they're the first two, that's a really good entry point into if you feel like reading a novel might be a little bit more difficult to get you up and started, rather than reading a graphic novel, which will be a bit quicker and I've found is very enjoyable. Even though number 3 in the series is not available in a graphic novel format, I have still went and purchased it. It's only a few pounds because they're all so damn old, and it's going to get me started on it. Whether or not it'll be as fun when I'm reading through the novels, I don't know, because I've really enjoyed the art of the book. But you know, it's been good enough, and like I said, 5 out of 5. I really suggest you go and check this out. It's a little bit more expensive than the average graphic novel is for its size. As you can see, it's not like the thickest. You could probably, I wouldn't read through it in one setting. It doesn't tell me how many pages are in total. I can probably show them for you here, but it will take like 2-3 hours or more. I'd probably want to take a few more settings just to kind of like enjoy it. Feel like reading too much or doing anything too much will eventually kind of just burn you out. But if you feel like the price that you can find on eBay or wherever else is worth it to you, then I would say it could be quite an enjoyable read indeed. Maybe it'll even be in a library, who knows. If you find yourself really into like Terry Pratchett and other fantasy fiction novels, you could perhaps check out Neil Gaiman. I suppose he's literally worked with them. I've not read too much of his stuff, only really Sandman, which is a comic which is definitely a little bit more adult and not kind of along the lines of like medieval stuff. But that's perhaps something worth checking out, and I feel like this is one of those like rabbit hole situations where if you like it, you can really go down it. Like I said, 41 novels in total, most of them novels, a few graphic novels, and it kind of makes Terry Pratchett out to be this really cozy author who you really want to cuddle up and read a book by. This was one of my Christmas book lists, and I'm very glad I made the purchase. I was a little bit iffy on whether or not it'd be good because I'd heard about him, but I'd never really got into the world of Terry Pratchett before. He has done other stuff that isn't just the 41 Discworld novels, but as of yet, my opinion of him is pretty high, and the opinion of this book is also 5 out of 5. So yeah, I should go and check it out.